Hi, I'm Richard Schwartz, President Emeritus of Jewish Veg and author of 3 editions of this book, Judaism and Vegetarianism, and most recently, Vegan Revolution, Saving Our World and Revitalizing Judaism. And even just a couple of weeks ago, cover story, unbelievable here in the Jerusalem Report, where it says right on the cover, Richard H. Schwartz argues that eating animal products violates Jewish teachings, and so far it hasn't been responded to. Okay, so I've started these podcasts because I'm hoping to interview many key vegetarian, vegan leaders, animal rights leaders, environmentalists, and want to get their stories out. And in this podcast, I have an amazing guest, Glenn Mirza, and he's written 11 books on veganism. And the most recent one, it's just a matter of fact, as we speak now, it just had a book launch. It's yesterday on August 19th. And to me, it could be a game changer. Fabulous book. And you'll find out why I say that when I interview Glenn. So first, Glenn, how are you doing? And glad to have you on the program. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Richard. It's good to be here.
Okay, first, I always try to find a story, if you guess, how does a person become so involved? So I'd like to hear a little bit, how did you become so involved in veganism that you ended up writing 11 books on veganism?
Well, I just stumbled into it. I became a vegetarian at 17 simply because there was a lot of heart disease in my family. So I didn't want to be middle-aged at 25, since so many of especially my male relatives, died in their 50s of heart disease, and I never met my grandparents. So I did it for my own health. I never talked about it. I was sort of a shy vegetarian. I became a vegetarian first, not a vegan, when I was 17. And it was just something I was doing for my own health, and I was not interested in preaching about it or trying to convert people. But then in my 30s, I got the opportunity, late 30s, I got the opportunity to work with Howard Lyman, who is a 4th-generation cattle rancher turned vegan and animal rights activist. And he had a powerful story about how he had engaged in modern industrial agriculture in Montana and turned an organic dairy farm into a feedlot operation, and destroyed the soil and harmed the animal life there. And in telling his story, I learned more about the environment and more about how important it was for the planet that people go vegan. Still, I thought it was a one-off project, and I helped Howard write that book, and I thought that would be my last book, but the book sold well, and in that book we predicted that mad cow disease would come to America, and so when it did, Simon & Schuster engaged us to write a follow-up book, which was called No More Bull. And I thought that would be my last book. Then I met Chef AJ, who has a YouTube channel now. And she implored me to help her with her first book, which was called Unprocessed. She had written the manuscript, but she needed help revising it. So I did that for her as a friend. And then Chef AJ, who at the time had been about 50 pounds overweight, lost the weight, got really fit, learned what she calls the secrets to ultimate weight loss. And we did that book. I helped her with that. And before I knew it, I wrote 11 books. My last 2 are Own Your Health, which was my own book with AJ's recipes, and now Food is Climate.
Okay, very interesting. By the way, I knew Howard very well. It's amazing person, how he changed so much and became one of the vegan leaders. I always quote him. He said, An environmentalist who is not a vegetarian, and now I think he'd say a vegan, is like a philanthropist who does not give money. And Chef AJ also, I'm very happy to say she interviewed me a couple of times. So these are wonderful people and they've influenced us so much. And I'm sure you're going to influence many, many people as well. Okay, so your latest book, Food is Climate. Somebody may wonder, what in the world is it about? Food is Climate. Can you explain that title and why you chose it?
Well, this is the book. And what I argue in the book is that we have been misled about the leading cause of climate change. We know that climate change is real. We know that it's happening, and we know that it's severe. And we know that really all life on Earth is threatened. Certainly civilization is threatened. So it's imperative that we discuss the leading cause of climate change. We're always told it's fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are a big part of the problem. We're digging up stored carbon in the earth like coal and oil, and we're putting it back into the atmosphere. That's a problem. I'm not denying that. But I don't believe it's the leading cause of the problem. We're not looking at the true leading cause, and we're not looking at the solution. Now, if you think about it, consider that we've been told for decades now that it's a problem that we're digging up coal and oil and putting it into the atmosphere. And it's only worse now than it was a few decades ago. Why is that? First of all, population has grown. Second of all, nobody is saying let's end the airline industry. Nobody is saying let's take all the cars off the road until they're all electric. Nobody is saying let's not allow anyone to use fossil fuels to heat their homes. So, and I'm not saying that either. These are not realistic solutions for the time being. So we can try to transition to electric cars. We should certainly try to transition to solar power and to wind. But that transition has been relatively slow, and we're not going to get to zero burning of fossil fuels anytime soon if we're realistic about it. But imagine if we did. Imagine if tomorrow somehow all the cars were electric and all the electricity was generated by renewable energy. Then could we take a deep breath and say, problem solved? No. Because none of those solutions draw down carbon from the atmosphere. They only reduce the amount in which we're emitting carbon into the atmosphere. So at best, we would no longer be emitting any carbon into the atmosphere from oil and natural gas and coal. And like I say, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But at best, that's what we would be doing. So would then any carbon be going into the atmosphere? Yes, it would. It would be going into the atmosphere from all the over 1 billion cows on Earth, which emit methane, which is 120 times as powerful a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide. Now, the UN tries to massage those numbers and puts it over a 100-year time frame and says methane is only 28 times as bad. Even 28 times is pretty bad, but I argue in the book it's really 120 times as bad. And we would still have carbon going into the atmosphere from wildfires, which are getting worse because we keep heating the earth. And we would still have carbon going into the atmosphere from nitrous oxide, which is used in fertilizer to grow grains to feed to cows and to other farmed animals. So all we would be doing is reducing slightly the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere. It's not a solution. The only solution is to reduce the carbon that's actually already in the atmosphere. And how do you do that? And the answer is forests. More forests and more vegetation. Well, where are you going to put the forests? You put them in Jerusalem? You could plant some more trees, I suppose, in Jerusalem. You can't put any forests there. You can't put any forests in Tel Aviv. You can't put any forests in Manhattan. You need land. Where do you get the land? It's currently being grazed by cows, by sheep. Over 1/3 of the Earth's land surface is currently being grazed. That is patent insanity. That's not how the land was originally given to us. It was originally forest. Some of it may have been wilder, more heavily vegetated grassland, but much of it was forest. When you restore the forest, the trees draw down the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and it will take decades, but the problem will be solved. We simply have to get rid of the farmed animals. We have to stop breeding animals in order to foolishly eat them and harm ourselves. We have to consider that most of the fossil fuels that the leading climatologists keep focusing on, most of the burning of those fossil fuels comes with some social good as well as a harm. The harm is that the carbon goes into the atmosphere, but the social goods are obvious. We get to fly in airplanes and see our relatives and friends around the world and visit the world. We get to transport ourselves. We get to heat our homes and cool our homes. So there's a real social good and manufacturing items that we need in daily life. All of that we have to address. We have to try to make as much of it electric as possible and make as much of our power renewable as possible. I'm not against any of that. But we have to understand that those are social goods and they're not going away tomorrow. We're not transitioning tomorrow, to be realistic. We have to transition as soon as possible off fossil fuels, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. You know, it's just clear. But eating meat has no social good. There's no nutritive value to it. There's no purpose to it. It only harms human health. I feel that it harms society in having violence at the core of our eating, but that's a personal opinion. But it certainly, objectively, scientifically, is bad for us, for our health. And it's objectively terrible for the water, for the environment, and now we know for the climate. So it is patent insanity to keep eating animals. We have to stop eating animals.
Okay, you make a super case, very rational. And in the book, you're also critical of people like Al Gore, Bill Gates, because they're working for reduction of climate. But as you point out, they talk more about renewable energy. They don't mention, or maybe a little bit in passing, the agricultural industry. So are there any key people who are supporting this approach? It's super rational. Are there others? So, you know, people sometimes go with big names, say, oh, so-and-so says that, they must be, okay. So are there any key people that have seen the light and are also promoting what you're doing so effectively?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Okay, are there any other key people? I know, I think one of them I saw from the endorsements is John Robbins. Any others who, unlike Bill Gates and unlike Al Gore, are...
Oh yeah, well, many people in the movement have been supporting this book. Many of the doctors who argue for a vegan diet. They haven't all read it yet, of course, but Dr. John McDougall gave me an endorsement for the book. John Robbins of Food Revolution Network has endorsed the book, and I posted about the book yesterday. I appreciate their support. There are climate scientists who have endorsed the book. Gerard Bishop of Australia endorses the book. And the book just launched, so not everyone has read it yet.
Okay, great. Now, one of the other important points you raise is that if people stopped eating fish, that could really improve the health of the oceans quite a bit. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that and what the effect on reducing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere would be if people stopped eating fish.
Well, the oxygen we breathe, much of it is produced in the ocean by the phytoplankton. And phytoplankton populations have declined. They decline with increasing heat in the oceans, and they decline if the whales are killed. The whales bring nutrients to the phytoplankton. The phytoplankton actually seed clouds. They reduce a chemical that helps cloud formation. So now think about it. The whales provide nutrients for the phytoplankton. The phytoplankton seed clouds that help cool the atmosphere. So the whales are helping to save the planet, as are their little friends, the phytoplankton. Aside from the cruelty of it, it is suicidal to kill whales. And we kill whales in various ways. Sometimes they're simply hit accidentally by boats. The Japanese, I believe, have started again with their intentional whaling efforts. And even lobster fishermen, and I write about this in the book, they set traps at the bottom of the ocean floor to catch the lobster. There are ropes that go up to buoys at the surface, and the whales get trapped in the ropes. So just to get lobster in your, local surf and turf restaurant, you may be contributing to killing whales. And killing whales is the worst thing we could do for ourselves, never mind for the whales.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have an ocean without whales, and they're taking all the fish out of the sea.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to have oceans with no life in it? We have to have an international moratorium on industrial fishing, and we have to have it yesterday. We have to stop raping the oceans. So it's also terribly unhealthy to eat these fish that are full of mercury. We have to stop eating fish. We have to stop eating meat, and then we will have more food. And we'll have more food because all the grains that we feed now to cattle, all the land that we use for that purpose is freed up to grow food for ourselves, for humans. We would have an excess of food. So a lot of that land should be returned to forests. We would have more trees and more food.
Okay, sounds good. Now, how serious do you see climate change as a threat to humanity? And is there still time? We see every day, it's so amazingly in the news recently, there's actually wildfires in Siberia. It's raining over Greenland, which is melting tremendously. And, positive feedback loop says, anyway, how serious is climate change, and is it potentially too late to make a difference?
I have to hope that it's not too late, but it's terribly serious. And one thing we have to be concerned about is human arrogance. We can't know how long it takes events to unfold. We could make our best estimates. The Biden administration made its best estimate that Afghanistan would not fall for months or a year, and it fell in weeks. I think it was 11 days. They had the best military estimates, tell them how long it would take, and they were wrong. We can have the best climatologists make estimates on how long it will take to get to an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we're almost there already. I think we're at 1.2. Now at 1.5, that isn't the end of all life on Earth, but things get very serious. And if we continually add methane to the atmosphere, we're going to be at 2 degrees Celsius increase, and then we'll be at 3 degrees Celsius. At that point, life starts to become really unlivable. So let's first deal with human arrogance. Let's not assume that we know. So since we don't know for sure how fast this can happen, if this could unfold more quickly than climatologists are estimating now, if, for example, it's possible that we get to a 2 or 3 degree Celsius rise in the next 30 years, do we want civilization to be threatened within 30 years, within 20 years, within 15 years? Because we don't know exactly when the permafrost will begin to melt and give off vast quantities of methane. So we have to do everything we can possibly do now. So let's start with the low-hanging fruit, the easiest thing to do. Because it'll be very hard to end the airline industry tomorrow. It'll be very hard to get rid of all the cars tomorrow. It'll be very, very hard for everyone around the Earth to stop heating and cooling their homes using fossil fuels tomorrow. That's not going to happen. But we can all stop eating animals today. So it's the easiest thing to do. It's the only solution that will work. And we could begin planting forests. And here's the good news. A lot of those forests will plant themselves. You don't even need human labor planting forests. Yes, we should have some active afforestation, some active engagement to plant trees. But a lot of the trees will plant themselves if we just get off the land and stop with the pasture maintenance fires that themselves are adding carbon to the atmosphere. I have a picture on the cover of my book, and you will see here that the red this is a NASA photograph. The red are the pasture maintenance fires around the Earth. All those fires are created so that people can eat meat. That's all because of meat. Those are pasture maintenance fires. Then you see a vast section of brown where the Sahara Desert is, going into the deserts of the Middle East and the Gobi Desert in China. So why is there so much desert over there? Is it just a fluke? Is it just that the Earth was created that way, with the desert from the top of Africa across the Middle East to China? Did that just happen? Well, where did agriculture begin 10,000 years ago? We know that these areas were forested 10,000 years ago. Now, that's when we lost the forest, in the last 10,000 years, across the top of Africa, the Middle East, and into China. Now, the Earth is billions of years old, 6 billion years old. We didn't lose those forests 500,000 years ago. We didn't lose them 200,000 years ago. We didn't lose them 50,000 years ago. We lost them in the last 10,000 years, and they turned into desert. Why the last 10,000 years? Well, when was agriculture invented? 10,000 years ago. That's when we started chopping down the trees and grazing goats and cattle. And that's what it did to that land in 10,000 years. And starting pasture maintenance fires, which have been going on a long time. So does anyone on Earth believe that humanity could survive if the entire Earth looked like that? If we had Sahara all around the Earth? We all know we would never survive. We'd never be able to grow enough food. This is what has harmed our ability to grow food, eating animals. And we have to stop the obvious insanity of this.
Well, you make a fabulous case, and I'm going to do everything possible to promote it. As a matter of fact, starting tomorrow, I'm scheduled to give a Dvar Torah, like a Torah lesson here at my retirement village in Israel. But a question I have is, what ideas do you have to effectively promote veganism so that people will stop eating meat and will be able to have that land to grow the trees? I see it as either your message succeeds or the world, humanity disappears. So it's a super message. Any suggestions for effectively promoting veganism and accomplishing your goal besides your wonderful book?
That's a great question, Richard. And you know, I'm doing all I can, and we could just each do all we can. You know, at first, everyone themselves should go vegan, and then we have to try to get our friends and family to go vegan. And, you know, I have made in many books the health argument. You know, it's not controversial. As I said in my last book, which is called Own Your Health. In Own Your Health, I made the case that there's not really seriously an argument between science, that the science that promotes eating plants and the science that promotes eating animals, because there is no science behind eating animals. There are no legitimate scientific studies that show a health benefit to eating animals. And I'll give you an example. There was a study that came out around a year and a half ago that got a lot of publicity around the world. It was called the Red Meat Studies. And it was published in a formerly legitimate scientific journal called the Annals of Internal Medicine. And the study by I think a dozen authors said, continue eating meat consumption as you do, and it's just fine. That was the conclusion of the study. So you might think, gee, what experiment did they do? Did they do an experiment on 1,000 people who ate meat and their health improved or stayed the same? Or no, they didn't do any study at all. Now think about it. It made international headlines. There was no study at all. What they did was what's called a meta-analysis. They looked at a bunch of other studies. And they looked at studies of blood pressure and heart disease and diabetes, things like that. And they gave it a point system. Longevity was another factor. So they looked at studies of vegans versus meat eaters on longevity, and they discovered, oh, the vegans live longer. All right, we'll give that we'll create a point system. So we'll give that, and I'm making up the numbers here, but it's just as accurate as whatever they came up with. They said, we'll give the vegans 3 points for longevity. Okay, well, look at blood pressure. Okay, yeah, it's true. The vegans do better on blood pressure. We'll give that 2 points. All right, well, let's look at diabetes. Oh, the vegans do better on diabetes. 2.5 points for the vegans on that. And let's look at all-cause mortality. It's better for the vegans. Okay, 1 point for that. And okay, now let's look at ease of use. What's easier? Well, it's much easier to eat meat. You can go to barbecues. You can go eat in restaurants. It's easier. So for the ease of use, let's give that to the meat side of things. Let's give that 43 points. And they came to the conclusion that given ease of use, continue meat consumption. And that made international headlines. Doctors say continue eating red meat. That was in a scientific journal, or what I call a formerly scientific journal. And they had the 12 authors had a vote, and 9 of them voted to endorse this harmful recommendation, and 3 of them protested and said, no, this is wrong. But they had a vote. It was 9-3. I guess science is a democracy, and they published that ridiculous study. So there is no science behind eating meat, period. Meat is bad for you, dairy is bad for you, eggs are bad for you, it's all bad for you. All the studies are on one side. Go to nutritionfacts.org. You never open the newspaper and hear fried chicken found to reduce cancer rates. No, it never happens. It's always blueberries and broccoli and cauliflower. It's always plants that have health benefits. So there's no case for eating animal foods for your health, and we have to now save the planet. So it's better for the planet's health.
Absolutely. By the way, I think that argument about ease and taste and all is no longer true, because as you know, there are so many wonderful plant-based substitutes for these meat products. And they say some have the look, texture, and taste so close to the meat products that long-time meat eaters can't tell the difference. So even that 43-point argument you mentioned doesn't hold anymore. Anyway, you've made a fabulous, fabulous case. I'm going to be promoting it and getting that word out. So final question, do you have any final thoughts? Maybe there's some point that I didn't question you on that is essential. I think you've covered it wonderfully, but just want to give you a chance to add anything you wish as a final question.
Well, I'll take the opportunity to make a sales pitch here for the book, which is that we now have a tool that we didn't have before. We've been trying for a long time, for really decades, to get the climatologists and the policymakers to acknowledge that animal agriculture is a leading cause, and I would say the leading cause of climate change. And they refuse to talk about it. Well, now there's a way that we can force them to talk about it. If this book becomes a bestseller, if more and more people buy this book, tell other people to buy this book, we're going to use some of the proceeds from the sales of this book to give out this book in Glasgow at the COP26 UN Convention on Climate Change.
Wow.
So the book becomes a tool that we now have, if people around the world will get behind it, to address the issue and to bring animal agriculture into the climate debate. It's long overdue.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much. You make a super persuasive case, and I want to wish you the best of success, because the future of humanity really depends on it. So all the best to you, and many thanks for being such a wonderful guest on this podcast.
Thank you, Rick.
And
Keep up the good work.
Israel.
Bye-bye.